Okay, now it's on, and if you look at the control, which displays the battery voltage right away, and at the same time, behind the scene, the timer starts counting. And now it reads 12.5 volt, which means our car's battery is in pretty good shape. Now, just to mention this button at the side of the control, which is the master power switch, but at the same time, it serves as the display mode selection button. So let's press it. Now the display switches to the timing mode. This is a very practical feature. For example, if I want to know how much time I spent on my way to work today, this tells me that. And press it again. Now here comes the USB amp mode, which tells you the output current of the USB ports. But now, of course, our USB ports are not connected to any devices yet, so it says 0 amp. Now press it again, and it goes back to the voltage mode. So 3 modes. Okay, let's look at the switches. I slightly touch switch number 1, and the blue LED indicator lights up, which means the power for outlet number 1 is on. And second is on. And all the 3 outlets are on. And USB ports are on too. Off. On again. And off again. So very cool. Okay, now I'm going to plug in some devices to see how they work. We have a dash camera in our car, so for outlet number 1, I'm going to just plug in this camera. Okay, and for the other 2 ports, I'm going to plug in 2 other devices. Okay, now I'm going to turn on number 1. Okay, let's look at the camera. It turns on. Okay, second on, and third on. See, all the lights are on. Okay, now third off, second off, and camera off. Let's look at the camera. Okay, it turns off. Now let's look at the USB ports. The maximum total output for the 2 USB ports is 3.4 amps with max 2.1 amps for either of the ports. But the actual output current is really up to the devices that you attach to the ports. And also, the 2 ports are respectively optimized for Android and iOS. There are labels printed beside them. And now for this port labeled iOS, I'm going to plug in an iPad mini. Okay, now nothing happens because we have to turn on the USB power. Okay, now it's on and the iPad starts charging. And if you look at the display, as soon as a device is connected to the port and starts charging, the display will automatically switch from the other 2 modes to the USB amp mode. Now it reads 2.05 amps, which is the charging current for our iPad. It's almost the maximum output for single port. Now if you want to switch to other modes, simply press this button again. Now, say if I want to go to the timing mode. Okay, now I'm going to switch to an iPhone to see if there is any difference. Okay, the current drops to just a little less than 1 amp. So the port is smart enough to deliver the current that the device needs. Okay, now I'm going to remove the iPhone, and if you look at the display again, which automatically goes back to the voltage mode again after 0 amp is displayed, because the amp mode isn't telling us anything anymore. Okay, now similarly for the other port, I'm going to first plug in a Samsung tablet. Now let's look at the current. It's 1.72 amps. Okay, also I'm going to replace the tablet with a Samsung phone. Okay, look at it. Now it's only 0.90 amp. So the current varies depending on different devices. Okay, now I'm gonna plug the iPad back to the port. Now both of the devices are charging, and if you look at the current again, the total current reaches 2.65 amps. Okay, now let's turn off the USB power and look at the display, 0 amp, and back to the voltage mode again. Now, these two ports are optimized for Android and iOS respectively. Doesn't mean that you cannot mix them up. It's not going to cause any damage to your devices or something if you do mix them up. It's just that they might not charge as efficiently. Okay, I'm gonna swap these two devices. Say if I'm gonna plug the iPad to this Android port and turn on the power. Let's look at the current. Now it's only 0.43 amp, so a lot slower. And also I'm going to plug the phone to this iOS port. Okay, remove it. Now it happens to be the same, but for a lot of other phones, they might not charge as fast as they do on this Android port. One more thing about these 4 sensor switches is that they have the memory capability, which means they can remember their power state right before the power is shut off to the entire device. Now I'll show you that. I'm going to plug these 3 devices back to the ports. Okay, now I'll turn on number 1 and number 3 and leave number 2 and USB off. Now I'm going to shut off the power to the entire device. There are 2 ways you can do that. One is through this master power switch. So I will press it down and hold it for 2 seconds. Okay, it's off. Now I'll press it again without holding. Okay, the power returns. And look at the switches and the devices, the same power state. And the second way is, of course, you can directly shut off the power to your car's outlet. Now, I'm going to do that. Okay, off. Now, on again. And look at the switches and the devices, all the same.